what the hell was going on in this book. I have never been so angry over a fucking suitcase in my entire life. This is one of the most disturbed, twisted, fucked up books I have read in a very long time, and I was very delighted. This book wasted so much of my goddamn time, and y'all know that I'm already black and gay, so I don't have much time on this earth as it is. I almost threw this book at so many points in time. I'm a bitch who loves drama. What up, my channel? My name is Jessie, and today we're going to be talking about the books that I read in August. What's up, cuties? How have you been? I am so excited to talk to y'all about the books that I read last month in August, despite the fact that I did not upload an August TBR. I had to take a little bit of a break in August. I was just feeling very overwhelmed. I needed to cater to my mental health. I needed to recenter myself and focus on friends and family and journaling and just doing things that fed me outside of YouTube, because it's so easy to make YouTube my entire world simply because I love it so much. But creator burnout is real, and I was definitely feeling that in August. So I got really behind on my content that I wanted to create for y'all subscribers. I got behind on my Patreon content, and it took me a while to actually realize that I was in a little depressive episode. Checked in with my therapist, we reevaluated my meds, we did all of that fun stuff, and now I am back and reinvigorated, and I've got a whole new focus, and I'm just really excited that I was able to do that self-work so that I can come back and keep making videos. I share this because normalizing mental health struggles is so important, and I just want to let y'all know that any of you who have been struggling with anything similar, it's nothing to be ashamed of. It is what it is. It's the way our brains work, and it absolutely will pass. So I did not get as much reading done in August as I wanted to, mainly because I didn't have a set TBR. That really helps me guide my reading, but also when I'm in an episode, I either read omnivorously or I read barely anything, and I was in one of those periods where I didn't read a whole lot. I actually, it's funny, I did really read a whole lot, but it was because I was reading audiobooks. Because when I'm in an episode, usually what that means is that I'm laying in bed, I just have trouble getting out of bed and motivating myself, and I can't sleep, which means that I'll just put on random audiobooks. So a lot of the books that I read were not on my TBR. These are almost all audiobooks, and they just helped me get through the episode. They gave me something to focus on besides my rapidly deteriorating brain, and they were a godsend. Even though a lot of these books I did not love, it was really fun to just not worry about a structured TBR and just scroll through my Scribd and my Libby and just find random books and kind of let me sink into that world as I fall asleep. I have here my trusty, dusty, and crusty reading journal where I chronicle my reads and my reading statistics for the month. So before we hop into this wrap-up, I'm going to do what I do in all of my wrap-ups, which is give you the nitty and the gritty on my reading stats. In the month of August, I read a total of 10 books. I read 1 spiritual realism book, 0 fantasies, 6 thriller horror books, 2 literature books, 0 poetry books, 0 nonfiction books, 0 science fiction books, and 1 romance. 5 of these books I read physically, 5 of them I read audibly, 3 of them were from my library, 0 were from my long list, 1 was an anticipated read, 1 was a DNF. My average rating was 3.8, and I read 40% authors of color, a total page count of 3,430 pages. The best book that I read was Healer of the Water Monster. The worst book that I read was Eleanor Oliphant. Now, after I calculated my stats, I remembered that I read 3 other books for this indie experiment video that I did. They were The Grin, they were The Body 37, and Madhouse, I believe. Depending on how long this video goes, I will talk about those books a little bit, and if not, I will just include that in my reading stats for September and talk about it then. But I did an entire dedicated, video to those books. So I'll leave that video linked down below. They were all indie thriller horror books, and I gave them between one of them was a DNF, and then one of them, I think the highest rating was like 5 stars or maybe a 4.5, that kind of thing. If you're at all curious about my first ever experience reading indie scary books, definitely check out the description box below. And without further ado, let us get into the books. So the first book I'll be talking about is And There He Kept Her by Josh Moling, which I rated a total of 2 stars. In this debut thriller, we are following 2 protagonists. One is a girl who broke into the wrong man's house and is being kept captive in his basement. And the other is the new sheriff in town, who is a closeted queer man and is trying to solve the missing case of this girl who just so happens to be his niece. And I was just scrolling through Scribd and I saw the book and I was like, sure, hell yeah. It was on like this list of queer male books or queer thrillers or something like that. And I was like, yep, absolutely. I haven't heard of it. Let's go. I can't call it a disappointment because I wasn't anticipating it to begin with, but my God, did things happen that really didn't need to happen. Y'all know, those of you who have been following me for a while know that my biggest pet peeve is flat villains. If you cannot make your villain compelling, I don't care. I need you to make me care about this villain's motivation. You can't just be evil for the sake of evil because that's boring to me. I need some interest in you psychologically. And so essentially the plot of this book is that this girl whose name I forget because she was forgettable, and her boyfriend, whose name is Jesse, who I remember because yours truly. The 2 of them are breaking into this man's house to steal his pills and sell them. It turns out that he kidnaps people. So he kills the boyfriend and, he takes the girl and holds her captive. And because the women that he likes to kidnap and torture and eventually murder are, full-grown women, he doesn't know what to do with this adolescent girl, because even though he's a violent, gross sexual predator, he's like, I draw the line at children. So he doesn't want to kill her, and she's slowly dying of diabetes, and they have this kind of like prisoner-captive dynamic situation going on while she's just trapped in his basement. And I found the whole thing to be so extremely exhausting. The part of the book that I found entirely unnecessary was that the author decided to make this man like over 300 pounds and to describe his body grotesquely, and his fatness was definitely villainized in the book. I just can't do with the fat shaming. It's not something that I want to read. It's not depiction that I feel is necessary. He had absolutely no characterization. And then the bronze of the operation is this really gross dude. He has a single worm functioning as his entire brain. The 2 of them are going to end up in jail anyway because he's so goddamn reckless. So those are our villains. Absolutely nothing there. The kid, to her credit, was really cunning for the most part. I love a cunning character, and I always have. Give me a character who is going to pretend to go along with the situation in order to get out of it. Give me a character who's going to kind of play the long haul game. I find that so much more interesting than a character who's trying to not think their way out of a situation, if that makes sense. So there is no twist. You know right away who the villains are. You know what their motivations are, all of that. This is an unpopular opinion. I don't need my thriller to have a twist. I just need it to be good. Even putting the fat shaming aside, I still don't know why the fuck that was in there. But even putting that aside, the book was just mediocre. I'm giving this a 2-star, not because it's a terrible book, but because it's just like every other commercial thriller that I've read before. It honestly reminded me so much of Don't Breathe. Just watch Don't Breathe, and I absolutely hated that movie. I thought the plot twist to that movie was absolutely disgusting. You guys know that I'm very exhausted with these run-of-the-mill commercial thrillers. If you're gonna be a commercial-ass thriller, I'm gonna need some spice. I'm gonna need you to convince me, honey. I read a bunch of reviews from people who were like, I don't think this man knows what it's like to be gay. Y'all, do y'all realize that the author of this book is gay? Now, I'm not saying that just because he's gay, the queer representation is fantastic, because being of a group doesn't mean that you are accurately representing, the whole experience, nor should you be responsible for doing so. But it is entirely okay to be queer and not vibe with the queer representation in a book, even if a queer person wrote it. No problem with that. But the issue that I'm having with a lot of these reviews is that these reviewers are erasing the author's queerness and assuming that the author is heterosexual. I have a problem with that. So that is something, whether or not you agree with or feel okay with the queer representation, I do want to make sure that y'all know that this author is queer. So y'all should definitely stop erasing his queerness. Next up, we have a book that was an absolute fucking treat and a delight. It provided the serotonin that my brain was entirely failing to produce, and that is none other than And the Babysitter Lives by Stephen Graham Jones. A lot of y'all, and myself included, have no idea that Stephen Graham Jones dropped a new book this year, and it is available only on audio. Unfortunately, those of y'all who cannot listen to audiobooks for various reasons are not able to access this book at this time. It might come out physically someday, but I think that this is supposed to be just an audio exclusive. This book was an absolute delight, a joy. It was such a surprise. The Babysitter Lives is about this young girl who is babysitting these twins overnight for an easy gig before she takes her SATs in the morning. So all she plans to do is, come in, kids go to sleep, she's studying for her SATs, and she's going to get a great score in the morning. But it's not that easy. First of all, parents are entirely overbearing, condescending, and the dad is a bit of a creep. Already we're off to a bad start. On top of that, the house that she is babysitting in was the site of legendary murders where this mother drowned her children in the bathtub and then gouged her eyes out. Or nobody was having a good day that time. And that happened on Halloween. And so there is a Halloween setting in this book, which I very, very much enjoy. And promptly after the parents leave the house, the kids start playing pranks on her. Most notably one where they start to vanish and reappear in different parts of the house. And she thinks that it is a joke at first, and then promptly realizes that it's not a joke and that there is a heavy paranormal element in this book. This book is one of the fastest, twistiest mindfucks of a horror book that you are going to read.
Editing Jesse here. I just want to be the first to say that I would have abandoned those kids long ago. The second shit started to get weird, they're not my fucking kids. This girl was doing entirely too much for these children that she did not carry. This is why I couldn't be a babysitter. Because something weird or serial killery or paranormal would happen and I would teleport back to my fucking house. I would be in the bath writing up, messaging an attorney for psychological damages. Okay, there is no fucking way that I would have, nope. Don't ask me to babysit y'all kids. Don't ask me.
The way that it is written is entirely unsettling, and you feel like you're standing on a platform that is slightly uneven. It's like you're going to teeter off of the edge of the earth by reading this book alone. It was so trippy and strange, and there was eyeball horror and insect horror and body horror. The main character is lesbian, and her girlfriend is a part of the book as well. Of course, she shows up, and she's not supposed to be there, and she could, get sucked into the horror of the book. It gave really, really intense what is it called? That movie with Sophia something, When a Babysitter Calls, When a Stranger Calls, that babysitter film where, she's babysitting these kids and there's a killer who calls and is like, hey, have you checked the children? And she goes and looks in on the kids and they're gone. And throughout the whole movie, she's trying to find these damn kids and while being terrorized herself. I'm telling you, if you liked that movie, you're going to love this book. Stephen Graham Jones absolutely loves slashers, and there is a lot of odes to slashers in this book. It has the heart and soul of a slasher novel. Now, his last slasher horror, which was My Heart is a Chainsaw, unfortunately did not work for me personally, but this book did all of the things that disappointed me in My Heart is a Chainsaw, but did them in a way that absolutely worked. So if you are one of those people who loves Stephen Graham Jones but was really disappointed with My Heart is a Chainsaw, give this book a try. My Heart is a Chainsaw is the only book of his that I've read that I did not enjoy, and he's back on top. He's back on top. This book was so good. The narrator was freaking phenomenal, and it's one of those books that you can read multiple times and you get more out of it each and every time. I know damn well I did not understand what the hell was going on in this book. My single brain cell was working so hard. It was damn near overheating trying to grasp what was happening in the story, but despite the fact that I was confused and unsettled, I enjoyed the ride, and that is good enough for me. A lot of people will rate a book down if they are confused. This is not to shade you if you're one of those people, but for me personally, I like that. I like being confused. I like being challenged. I like being able to reread a book multiple times and get more. Now, I do think there is a big difference between you're confused because the book is over your head and you just need to, do some work to grasp it and read other people's reviews and talk to other people. That's really fun for me. So there's a difference between that and the book isn't well written. The book is written in a way that is unnecessarily convoluted, or it wasn't well thought out. Those are two very different things. And you can tell, at least I felt, that in The Babysitter Lives, it was the former. It was that this book is just a trippy ass concept and you're going to have to work a little bit hard in order to grasp it. I mean, hey, unless you're just, much smarter than me, which is very easy to be. But reading other people's reviews, it seems that they also were kind of tripped out by this book, and I'm just so excited to reread it. Next up, we have Healer of the Water Monster by Brian Young. This is a charming middle grade story that absolutely stole my heart, and it is one of my new favorite books of all time. And I don't mean favorite middle grade books, I don't mean favorite young adult books, I mean just favorite books, period. Now, in Healer of the Water Monster, we are following a young boy named Nathan who goes to visit his grandmother while his father is taking a trip to Vegas with his absolutely insufferable girlfriend. And while he is spending time with his grandmother, who he loves dearly, the water monster is a holy being. Nathan ends up befriending and coming to love this ailing water monster, and he sets out to save it from dying at all costs. Now, the author himself, as well as the characters and mythology in the book, are Navajo. And you really see that mythology, that spirituality, that lore absolutely come to life, woven with issues impacting Navajo individuals, issues of environmentalism, issues of PTSD in Navajo communities, issues of mental health that impact Navajo children, and issues of preservation of culture, history, and identity. But it is really, really important to acknowledge that this book is not fantasy. And when reading this book and respecting it, despite the fact that there are heavy fantastical elements, author himself has said, my culture is not a fantasy, and that is why I'm classifying this as spiritual realism. This book tackled a lot, and it did these things so bravely, despite the fact that Nathan is a kid you will just absolutely fall in love with. You'll want to protect him. You will root for him. He is such a beautiful and strong and brave kid. He is a kid who struggles with the way that his weight is perceived in the world. He's learning to embrace both science and the mythology and lore and spirituality of his culture, while also acknowledging that the rest of the world does not. He has a heart of gold. It is obvious and visible on every single page. And one of the things that I really loved is that our protagonist struggles with suicidality, and he's a young kid, and talking about issues of depression and mental health as they impact boys and men is so very important. And a large part of the book is talking about depression from a spiritual lens, which I very, very much appreciated. So Nathan himself struggles with suicidal ideation, as well as his uncle, and his uncle also struggles with alcoholism and PTSD and other symptoms that have been caused both by colonialism and by things like war. There is so much that I can say about this book. There are so many ways to dissect. There's so many really important and critical themes, but I would encourage you to look up reviews from Navajo reviewers and hear their perspectives of the book rather than getting it from me, because I am not Navajo. What I can say is that this is a book that I want to read and reread and reread. I saw so much of myself in this book, and the writing was just absolutely beautiful. This book literally made me cry. I think it really got me in my feelings, especially because I was going through a really difficult period myself, while getting to read about a character who was in the same space and seeing the way that he tackled it and moved with it. It meant a lot to me. It is such a beautiful and underrated book. It is full of magic and science and history and culture and spirituality, of heart and soul, of ferocity. It is a book of family and values and tradition, and I just want everybody to read it. I also read Social Creature by Tara Isabella Burton, which I grabbed from my library. I grabbed the audiobook, and this again was a book that I just found kind of by scrolling through my Libby catalog. This book falls into a very specific niche that I like to read, even though I don't think I as of yet have given a book in this niche 5 out of 5 stars, simply because I find the characters absolutely insufferable and the writing to be underwhelming, which was exactly the issue that I had here. But I still enjoyed the ride. Essentially, this niche is where you have one character of extreme privilege who has such a unique and spoiled and lavish life, and you have a character who doesn't have that privilege who becomes obsessed with her, and it's usually 2 girls. And I'm so drawn to these stories because I love stories about obsession, obsessive relationships, toxic female relationships, codependent relationships. I find those books very, very interesting, but I have as of yet not been able to give any of them 5 out of 5 stars. So if you have any recommendations for those kinds of books that you think will be 5 out of 5 stars for me, let me know. The last one that I tried was Astrid Sees All which unfortunately was a letdown. This book is commonly described as a thriller, and I personally would put it as a literary thriller. You know right from the beginning that one of the girls is dead. And so what Social Creature is about is this very wealthy, vapid, spoiled girl named Lavinia who lives in basically like a penthouse apartment in New York City. And the protagonist of the book is a babysitter who is just really, really struggling. She's got like 4 jobs. She's always hustling and she still never seems to have enough money. And I believe she is 30. And she meets Lavinia while babysitting her younger sister and just falls absolutely in love with her life. And Lavinia kind of takes her under her wing and takes her to all these glitzy, glamorous parties. It's very Gatsby vibes, very old New York money. And they just kind of develop this codependent relationship and this obsession. And you know right when the book starts that Lavinia dies. You know that she dies, but you don't exactly know how. But you find out. Holy shit, do you find out. I can't talk about why this book was so frustrating without spoiling it. The suitcase being carried around and the contents of the suitcase. I have never been so angry over a fucking suitcase in my entire life. It's giving what the fuck. The book is essentially commentary on our extreme obsession with social media and how what you see on social media isn't real. It's not reality. I'm not going to go into detail because I'm going to make an entire video about this book or including this book. And if you want to see my last Books That Wasted My Time video, I will leave that in the description box down below. Switching gears, we're going to be talking about one of my new favorite horror books of all time, and holy shit was I not expecting to have a new favorite horror as of last month. Like I said, I was just scrolling through Scribd. I found a random horror book. It sounded twisted and I was like, okay, cool. I will put this on, and I fell in love. Now, the book in question is The Butterfly Garden by Dot Hutchison. Obviously, I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. Now, it is wild that I'm just now hearing, discovering this book because I'm listening to it and my mind is freaking blown. I am in absolute love. And I'm like, why is not everybody talking about this book? And I find out not only that it's a series, but that this book was huge like in 2016, which was before I joined the book community. So thriller horror aficionados who have been thriller horror fans for a long time probably already know about this book. But for me, this author, this series, it's all entirely new. And I am obsessed. I was so tempted to just start the book all over again. What The Butterfly Garden is about is a serial killer who is known as the Gardener. And he kidnaps these girls and he keeps them in this illustrious, magnificent garden. And when the butterfly expires, he kills, preserves their bodies in glass and resin, and then puts them on display in the garden for the other butterflies to see. It's really fucked up. This is one of the most disturbed, twisted, fucked up books I have read in a very long time, and I was very delighted. There are so many content warnings for this book. I was so impressed. It has been such a long time since a book has unsettled me. It has been such a long time since I was reading a book with my jaw on the ground because I was so deeply unsettled, and I love this book for it. I've been reading horror and thrillers and watching horror thriller movies literally my entire life, and so it's very hard to shock me. And the fact that this book shocked me so bad says a lot. So just be careful with this. Just be careful with this, okay? And a part of the reason that it shocked me so much wasn't that these things were like super wild. I mean, they're super wild, but it was how well the psychology was put out in the book, because psychologically the torment that these girls are experiencing was so well put out on the page. You relate to these girls so much because their characters are so well built, and that's what makes it horrific, is because you know these girls and you're rooting for them and you want them to escape and you want them to survive, and they die. It just was a fucking amazing book. And the book kind of opens up with the garden having been destroyed, and in scene 1, the butterfly that all the other butterflies look up to, she's like the leader of the butterflies, even though she doesn't want to be. She's being interviewed by a detective, an FBI agent, who's trying to figure out what the hell happened. Her hands are absolutely destroyed by the fire, and she's like, okay, I'll tell you what happened in the garden, but you have to hear the story from the beginning. And so she's very painstakingly going through everything from her abduction to the very end when, they all escape, that kind of thing. So it is a police procedural, and you're switching from the detectives' perspective and hers, And when I tell you, Dot knew exactly when to end a chapter. She knew exactly how much detail to give. She knew when to leave it up to the reader's imagination and when to pull back. I felt like a fucking yo-yo. I was this author's bitch, okay? The whole book. It blew my fucking mind. I was so freaked out. The hairs on the backs of my fucking arms were just raised. I was so angry at this gardener. I wanted to dismember him. I still want to kick the motherfucker's ass. Another thing that I really, really, really appreciated about this book is that, so there is sexual violence in it, but the thing that I appreciated was that the author makes those scenes fade to black, and when sexual violence is being talked about, it's always from the girl's perspective, and you fully are being made to understand how disgusting and horrific and non-glorious it is. And that's often my issues with horror thriller books, with true crime, that kind of thing. There's just like a certain level of victim exploitation and glorification of sexual violence and too much goddamn detail, and I don't like the way that sexual violence is written in thriller and horror books, and I think that a lot of times it's very, very problematic. And this is one of the few books that I've ever read in my life that did it in a way that didn't feel like that. It's still absolutely disgusting. And there also are a lot of issues of morality in this book, of like what makes a person good, what makes a person bad, what makes them in the middle. It's just, the book is so good, and when I found out it was a part of a series, I fucking squealed, and I'm already reading the second book. The next 3 books I want to talk about are After Dark with Roxy Clark, Shades of Rust and Ruin, and The Weight of Blood by Tiffany D. Jackson. I have no fucking idea where Roxy Clark is. She's on vacation. I read all 3 of these books for a vlog where I read horror books with red on the cover. The vlog was truly a reading experience. They are all YA horror and thriller books, and I absolutely loved them. I gave Shades of Rust and Ruin 3 stars. Oh no, I gave Shades and Rust and Ruin a 4-star. This is one of the most atmospheric YA thrillers I've ever read. It is set during Halloween, so if you love a Halloween setting, definitely read this. It involves a girl who creates this magical, ghostly world that she and her boyfriend end up falling into, and they have to kind of rescue their uncle, which it sounds really juvenile, but it's actually really, really well done. It is a book that combines magic and science and, you know, engineering and robotics really well. You have representation for a girl who is an artist as well as a girl who is in robotics. There's really good mental health representation for boys. The entire book just gave me Halloween Town vibes, so I definitely recommend reading this book. And there's also a complex sibling sister relationship, which I really love. Same thing with After Dark with Roxy Clark. That's another thriller mystery involving sisters. And then we also have The Weight of Blood by Tiffany D. Jackson, which is one of my most anticipated releases. As you can see, I annotated it to high hell. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, and this is a remix of Stephen King's Carrie, except 10,000 times better. So that vlog is spoiler free. It has not gotten enough love, so if you haven't seen it, please check it out. Oh, and After Dark with Roxy Clark, I gave 3 stars. So the next 2 books are gonna go pretty fast because the second to last book that I have is The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armas. And y'all, everybody knows I hate this book. Everybody fucking knows. I made a reel about how much I hated it. I made an Instagram post. I made a dedicated YouTube video. I made a YouTube short. I have told everybody who could possibly listen that I didn't like this book. So I will leave the dedicated Books That Wasted My Time video down below, where I talk about why this book wasted so much of my goddamn time. And y'all know that I'm already black and gay, so I don't have much time on this earth as it is.
That's all I'm gonna say about that book.
Editing Jesse's back because I'm trash. I realized that I never talked about Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine and why I DNF'd that book because I didn't want to talk about it. And honestly, there's no real tea here. It just was boring. I was bored. This is the most boring book I have ever read. It was a slog to get to page 50. I don't know why y'all were so excited about the writing and the storytelling and Eleanor's fucked up ass life, which honestly would have been more enjoyable if the book was exciting in any kind of way. And so to kind of review this book, I have compiled a list of photos that will better explain how exciting I thought this book was.
That's all I'm gonna say about that book.
And then the last book that I read for the month of August was Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkerson, I believe. And this was my patron buddy pick for the month. I really, really loved it. Black Cake is about two estranged siblings who come together over the reading of their mother's will. And they find out that their mom has left them an inheritance of a slice of black cake. The book is about these two siblings trying to figure out why the fuck their mom left them a slice of cake. You are following them in the past and the present. It is a family saga, a family drama. You're following the mom as a kid. You're following the mom's father and the fraught relationship that existed there. The mother's best friend. You're following a cast of characters, all of whom are family and friends to this family. And you're following their immigration from, I believe they're Jamaican, from Jamaica to America. It is one of the most complex pieces of literature that I've read in terms of all of the moving parts, in terms of the turmoil that these characters experience, what they face, what they go through, and how deeply woven their stories are together, even if you don't see it at first. It is a book that is going to make you cry. It is going to make you throw it. I almost threw this book at so many points in time during the reading process. And these are characters that are going to make you feel things. They will make you feel rage. They will make you feel joy and pride and disappointment. It's a book that is about family, and not just the ones that blood dictates, but the ones that we choose for ourselves. Over on Bookstagram, people have really been celebrating this book all year, and now that I've read it, I can definitely see why. It is a powerhouse piece of literature, and I have no doubt that this author is going to have a very long and beautiful writing career. Not all of them are short, but it's got a more brief writing style. I wasn't really sure if it was working for me. I do like my lyrical writing. It's not a must, but I do really like it because I'm a bitch who loves drama. Because the book is so goddamn long, I found that it actually really worked. It was the perfect writing style for the story, and there were so many plot twists in this book. This is one of the twistiest books I have ever read. Like, if this were a thriller, my neck would be broken from all of the twists. Even though while reading it, I was like, it's giving 3-star. Okay, it's giving 4-star. If I could rate this book higher than 5, I would. And I love that. I love when you're reading a book and you're like, it's a 4, it's a 3, it's whatever. And then those final chapters, that final 50 pages, and sometimes that final page is what tells you, like, no, this is a 5-star read. So if you've been on the fence about this book, please read it. I'm currently finishing the edits on my spoiler-filled reading vlog that I did on this book with my patrons. So if you want to see that vlog to kind of like get what I'm talking about in terms of like the spoilery portions of this book, and you want to read it with me in the vlog or whatever, my Patreon is going to be linked down below. What my patrons and I are reading this month is N.K. Jemison's The City We Became, which I'm also going to be filming a spoilery-filled reading vlog for that. Our patron dedicated video is fall book recommendations, where I give 20 plus recommendations for books that will help you slide right into fall. These are books of absolutely all genres, different kinds of narratives, and mainly adult books, but there are some books in there for those of you who want to break it up and get into some YA books as well. That is going to do it for this video. Have you read any of these books, and did I put any of them on your radar? Comment down below by letting me know what the last 5-star thriller that you read was. Give me some thriller recommendations because it is the season. And if you want to show me that you made it this far in the video, why don't you leave a pumpkin emoji? Because fall, look, I know it's not September 22nd yet, but it will be soon. Just let me have this. Be good to yourselves, be good to others, and I'll catch you in my next one.